Welcome to a new lesson in research method. Today's lesson is about ethical consideration in engineering and research. This lesson has three objectives. First, you will understand your ethical responsibilities as an engineer, both micro and macro ethics, and we will learn in a minute what does this mean. Then, during your research, you will be encountering several ethical issues. So we will see these issues at each step of your research, and you will learn what are potential ethical issues that could arise and how you can address them. And then later you will apply whatever ethical consideration you learn it here, you will apply it in your research, and this will be reflected in your research proposal. Okay, so let's get started. So ethics in engineering and research, let me just start by this definition of engineering. So engineering, I will just read it. The professional art of applying science. So it is applied science. You have our scientific understanding, and we put this into practice for the optimum conversion of natural resources for mankind. What does this definition has to do with ethics? One key word is the word like optimum conversion of natural resources. So engineering, you put science in practice to optimally converge natural resources to something useful. Not to waste natural resources or not to unwisely use them. This has to do with ethics? Yes. Because let me tell you, there are two types of ethics, like within a professional field, that the ones that we generally discuss is microethics. So that is basically your individual responsibility and conduct, like your conduct, like you are an honest person. I don't cheat, I don't falsify data, I don't fabricate data, I deal with my clients and my colleague in an honest way. I observe all like professional codes and so on and so forth. So this has more to do with like how honest you are, or your conduct, like how honest your conduct are. But there is, like, you're an honest person. There is another type of ethics, which is macroethics. And macroethics, this has to do with your social responsibility as a science and engineer. So in this definition, what you are seeing here is more of the macroethics. Like you are optimally using the available resources. You are not wasting it. Or you are not sub-optimally using these resources. So that has to do with ethics as well. Okay? So this microethics mean mainly like you are a person with an honest conduct, but macroethics, you are responsible in what you're doing. What you're doing is something useful and has an impact to the society around you. That is basically the difference between these two. Here I am honest, here I'm responsible. Like that is the difference. So, and professional codes of ethics now, they are not only limited to this micro ethics, like how I deal with my colleagues and my profession and with my employer, but also micro ethics, like what is my social responsibility as an engineer, and I'm doing my job as an engineer responsibly or not. Okay, so an example would be the American Society of Civil Engineering Code of Ethics. So in this class exercise, I want you to read the American Society of Civil Engineer Code of Ethics, and you identify like one macro and one micro ethical consideration that you find for you like challenging to maintain or challenging to achieve, and then discuss like why this seems like challenging for you. So let's look at the code. Let me just walk you through this. So here this would be like the code of ethics. It's in two formats. This is like one format, just one page. You can print it and even keep it like in your office, or this is just like a 3-page format. Let's look at this one here. So Code of Ethics, the American Society of Civil Engineer. So you have like ethics toward like the society, like for example, like first and foremost protect the health, safety and welfare of the public, enhance quality of life for humanity. So you see, this is more to do with macro ethics, for example. Yeah, this would be an example of one. Have zero tolerance to bribery, fraud, corruption in all form, and report violation in the proper authority. That has to do, for example, with micro ethics. Yeah. Let's look here. This is like natural and built environment. Adhere to the principle of sustainable development. So now you see here, this is a clear micro ethics issue. So for example, like you are an urban planner and you were asked to develop like a city, and you are planning this city to make it like, for example, car dependent. Is this ethical with respect to this macro ethical principles, where car dependent means more energy consumption, more pollution, more stress on the environment, versus you create a city where the people have like the option, if they want to use a car, they can use a car, but they also have a second option if I want to use public transportation, if I want to use a bicycle, then that design will accommodate these choices. So you're not only forcing people on one thing, use a car, which could be very energy dependent and wasteful of resources, but you give them different option to choose from. This is just example of macro ethics. Based on where you're living, that could be very challenging to implement, because there could be like some established practices on some interest groups that would be against such practices. For example, like in California, long time ago, some car company, automobile company, what they did, they bought some public transportation company just to get them out of service in order to be able to sell their cars, for example. Yeah. So if you are in such atmosphere, it could be very challenging to like design your city to accommodate for different choices, and not just like one option that everyone has to adhere to. Yeah. This is just an example. Yeah. So I'm not gonna read like this, like you just read this. So here, this is like with engineers, for example, uphold honor, integrity, and dignity of your profession. That's micro ethics, for example. With your peer, for example, like this is with your client and employer, act as faithful agent of their clients and employer with integrity and professionalism. That's micro ethics, for example. Example of a micro ethics. For engineer, only take credit for professional work they have personally completed. So this has to do with plagiarism and things like that. So that's another example of micro ethics. But what is interesting about this document is that you see a mixture of not only micro ethics but macro ethics as well. Yeah. So that would be your participation activity number 1. Okay. Where in your research well ethical consideration occur? So I will like there are like these slide and the next 4 or 5 slides I will be covering different steps in your research, and we will see in each step or each phase where ethical consideration could occur and how you could deal with them. So before I show the slide, I just want you to pause the video and think for a few minutes prior to conducting your research. What are some type of ethical issues that could occur, and how are you gonna address like these ethical issue? Yeah. Okay. So for example, like some of the ethical issues that could occur. Let me show you the slide. So here, some of the ethical issues that you occur is that you should examine your professional association standard. This is what we just did right now in the previous slide. So consult the code of ethics for your professional association in your area and make sure you are adhering to it. Yeah? If you are dealing with human or animal subject, make sure to seek the university approval on campus through an institutional review process. This is called IRP, and so submit proposal for IRP approval. So you submit this proposal if you are doing with human subject. Human subject means, for example, I am interviewing some people. So now I'm doing like human subject. Yeah. That would be, so you need an IRP for that, yeah, or an animal subject. Yeah. If you will be conducting an experiment or testing your equipment somewhere, you need to get permission from the participants. So identify where you will be conducting these tests and then start getting approvals. Yeah. Select a site without like a vested interest in the outcome of the study. So make sure that like this site that you are selecting, there's no conflict of interest. Like you want to do a study about fertilizer and pesticide transport. Make sure to select a site not in your farm, for example, or a farm where you have shares in it, like you are a shareholder in it or you are a partner there. Yeah, because that could bias the result and could make could raise other like ethical consideration. Negotiate authorship for publication. So that's important before like you start the work. Set some rule for authorship for publication. Like, so you have the work, you divide the work, you see which one will lead which effort, and you negotiate like authorship rule. Like for example, the one who writes the manuscript, he will be the first author, for example, or the one who produced the data, he will be the first author regardless if he wrote the manuscript or not, something like this. So you make these type of regardless, like he did the major effort in the writing. Yeah, so make this consideration. Okay. So this is prior to conducting. Like at the beginning of your study, again, pause the video and think where some issue, ethical consideration could appear at the beginning of your study. Yeah. Okay, so here is some examples. Identify research problem that will benefit participant. So make sure that what you are doing is like useful. Again, I have to state this again and again and again. Don't spend your time on something that's not useful. Make sure that what you are doing is important and useful and will have an impact and you are benefiting other from this work. Yeah. So if if your work will benefit those who are participating in this work, like make sure that you are aware of this and you inform the participant about this. Yeah. Make sure to disclose the purpose of the study to your participant. So when you approach your participant, you inform them, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I will do, and this is how I will do it, and I'm engaging you in this study for so and so and so. And I will be sharing the results of this study with you. Yeah. Don't pressure participant into signing consent form. So tell the participants that you don't have to sign contest form if you like to participate in this research after they know about it. That would be very appreciated. If you want to participate but you have some you'll be providing confidential information and you need some special arrangements, that could be also arranged. So you discuss different arrangements that could accommodate the needs of your participant. Yeah. And you need to learn about this yourself. Yeah. What special accommodation you can provide. Yeah. Especially if it has to do with confidential information or things like that. Yeah. Respect the norm and character of the indigenous society. So learn about the culture, learn about the religion, learn about gender issue and other differences that need to be respected, and have a respect for this. For example, like I did some geophysics work before in the big island in Hawaii, and they consider the peak of some of the mountains, the big mountains there, to be like a sacred place. So we don't need to go to these peaks. Like we can just do your geophysics work just below this peak and avoid this peak and avoid even going there at all, because there is no reason. Yeah. And I mean, just don't go there out of curiosity. If there are certain like dressing rules that you need to observe to accommodate for like the culture, try to observe these rules. Yeah. Be sensitive to the needs of vulnerable population like children. So if you are involving in children, you need, for example, to obtain appropriate consent from like their parents as well as the children. That's just like an example. Yeah. So these are just few examples. Again, your participation activity for this task. So here, like I'm just showing it. Like as we go through these ethical considerations, select the ethical issues that would be most critical to your research and discuss it with your class. That's your participation activity. I mean, you don't have to discuss all these, but just select, like as we go through this example, and it does not necessarily need to fall under this example, but it could be something else. Yeah, just select one, only one. Yeah, you don't need to, only one for all these steps. Like not for each step, just one for all the steps. Yeah, and discuss it with the class. So this is the beginning of the study. Through the data collection, of course, respect the site and disrupt as little as possible. So if you are doing some geophysical work and you need to do some digging to put your equipment, after you remove your equipment, try to get the site back to as close as to its original state as you find it. And if you are expected to cause some disturbance, communicate this with your participant and those who provided you access. Yeah. Make sure that all participants receive the same treatment. Yeah. similarly, like if you are doing like placing some like with respect to the disturbing your site, like if you are placing some equipment to measure flow or water quality or whatever, make sure that these equipment that you are placing has minimum disturbance to the aquatic ecosystem. And make sure also that local residents or like local user of the sites are aware of what you're doing. So if you're putting equipment, you might want to put your contact information near this equipment so that if they found this like strange object there, they can contact you and learn why are you putting this, because sometimes there might be some fishermen, they might see this instrument and they will think, oh, somebody is putting this to direct the fish in another direction or to do like a new fishing practice or whatever. So if they found like your contact information, they will contact you. And this is also another way to protect your equipment, to make sure that your equipment are safe and protected. Yeah. Make sure that all participants receive the same treatment. That is also very important. For example, like you are doing a control experiment, like you are doing experiment about certain new water saving technology, yeah, and you are doing two groups, like the control group and the experiment group. Make sure that the control group will have access to also to this technology, like either during or after the experiment. Just tell them don't use it now because you are the control group, but make sure that they will have access to this technology after the study is concluded and they have the same information. Yeah. Avoid like deceiving participant. So you need to clearly communicate the purpose of the study and how data will be used. So that is also another ethical consideration. Sometimes, especially when you are dealing with environmental issue, if you disclose especially some very sensitive and very critical environmental issue, if you disclose the purpose of your study, especially to those who are causing these problems, they might not cooperate with you. But I mean, try your best. Yes, try your best. And I've had this before. I was, for example, doing inventory for PCP, persistent, some persistent organic pollutants, and I had to contact, for example, some companies who were manufacturing transformers for that included this pollutant. At the beginning, they were not cooperative with me, but then I asked to meet the chief engineer, and after meeting with him and like forming this trust and forming this relationship with him, we started to have very fruitful and very informative discussions that informed our study. This is just an example. Respect potential power imbalances and exploitation of participant, like so this is to avoid, for example, like leading participant or designing the interview question in a way that participant will give you a certain answers that you're looking for. So avoid doing this, and avoid also sharing your personal impression, and also disclosing like disclosing sensitive information. For example, like when you are interviewing local farmer about water resources management, avoid imposing management. Researcher, like as a researcher, you should avoid imposing your opinion and ensure like the privacy and that involve the farmer are collaborating with you to shape your research question, rather than you just have a certain research question, you have something in mind that you want to prove. Try to avoid this attitude, but you because they could actually, and this most probably, they know more about these issues than you. So you learn from their experience and you shape your question accordingly, your research question accordingly. Do not use participant data. Do not use participant by gathering data and leaving the site. So provide certain form of rewards for participant. That could be also financial reward, like you could give them a gift card, for example, or some form of financial reward, or some other form of reward. Like the least would be that you get their contact information, and once this report is published, you share it with them, and you share your research finding with them. Avoid collecting harmful information. So stick to the question of the interview question and the protocol, and avoid like propping for like sensitive or illegal, like for example, like you are interviewing some farmer about pesticide use. So as a researcher, avoid propping for sensitive or illegal practice, and focusing only on safe agriculture practice outlined in your protocol. And avoid, try to get into sensitive or like if they are doing some illegal practice, like that's you're not an investigate, like you are not like a police investigator, you are a researcher. Okay, so this is in the data analysis. Okay, again, like in order not to make this video very long, I'm not gonna like so avoid like sliding with participant, like going native, like report multiple perspectives. So if there are multiple perspective, report multiple perspective. Don't just report the perspectives that support your hypothesis or your ideas. Avoid disclosing only positive results, report contrary finding. Again, that's also very important. Like you want to prove that something is useful, but there were some contrary finding. Like it turned out that like this method, yes, it is useful, it has its own uses, but it also has its own problems, and it raises also some certain issues. So that actually you make your research more stronger, because you say, okay, this is the method, this is how this method is useful, but these are the controversy or the challenges of these methods. As that this controversy and the challenges, that could be your future research, to address this controversy or challenges. Respect the privacy and anonymity of participants. So yes, so like if they don't want to like there is no need even to share their name unless it is important, and unless you get consent, and unless something that they welcome. And this serves what you are doing. So for example, like I'm doing a research about relational value and how relational value is important for groundwater management practice, and I was taking one farm as a case study, and this is a family business that goes from one generation to another. In that case, I can report their name, and they would be very happy, because that is their family history, and then they would, this is exactly tied to my research, which is about relational value and how I relate to the place that I live in, and including like my family history, things like that. So this is with data reporting and sharing, like avoid falsifying authorship, evidence, data, and finding and conclusion. So report honestly, like how to address this, just report honestly. Like if you found some outliers, don't remove your outliers in the data. Just report the data as is and say this is an outlier, and try to say, okay, this outlier could be because maybe we did a mistake. This outlier could be because some other environmental factors that were occurring at this time. This outlier because of maybe this is something that we need to look at more in detail. Do not plagiarize. You'll talk about this later. Avoid disclosing information that would harm participant. I mean, that goes without saying. Communicate in a clear, straightforward, and appropriate language. Like use unbiased language, appropriate for the audience and for your research. Share data with other. So share it with participants, stakeholder, like online. And we have a whole lesson about fair data principle and data sharing and data management plan. So you will learn more about this item. Keep raw data and other material, store data and material for like 5 years, because people, I mean, will either, like I asked, like I was reading some research that I won't use in my research, and then I did it, the paper did not have all the information. Sometimes I will go to the author and tell them, could I just get this data, could I get this information? Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't keep it. And again, the lesson of fair data, you will learn more about this. Do not duplicate or piecemeal publication. So just publish your new finding once. There is no need to keep like republishing it again and again and again. And this is a form also of plagiarism. That could also get like to be a form of plagiarism. And also avoid like you have some data like splitting it into like 3 or 4 pieces and publishing it like piece by piece. Again, you can do this if that is the best way of doing this, and you want to focus on one specific aspect at a time. But if there is no need to do this, then don't do it. Yeah. If you're just doing it in order to have more publications, then don't do it. But if there is an actual need and a real need to do it, then do it. Yeah. And you are the only one who can judge this. Provide complete proof for compliance with ethical issue and lack of conflict of interest. So what would be an example for this? An example for this would be an institutional review board. So some journals, like they will not not some journals, like most journals, they will, like if you are using human subject and you didn't provide IRB, they're not gonna publish your work. Okay. State who owns the data from the study. Yes, so give credit for ownership to researcher, participant, and advisor, and state who owns this data and provide like a license with your data. And again, all these issues are covered under the lesson of fair data principle. Okay, so let's look more at the plagiarism, falsification, fabrication. So before like I just want you to pause the video for a moment and just think about like these 3 terms and what's the difference between these 3 terms. Okay. So so plagiarism, this is basically like you are using the other's work without credit. Others' work could be others' idea, others' words, and that is not nice because, for example, like you could be sharing some research idea with someone and then he will take it and do it without giving you credit. Or even worse, you started already working on it, you have your codes, he will take your codes, he will take your idea, he will just complete it on his own and then publish it without giving you any credit for like the initial work that you did. So this is plagiarism, and this is not nice. You are taking credit for something like that where you don't deserve this credit, or you don't deserve all this credit. You just deserve part of it, but not all of it. So this is plagiarism, and also plagiarism would include the self-plagiarism that you cite, like you use your own work and you are reusing it again without providing citations. You get credit for it twice, and this is also not good. Yeah, this could be a form of cheating because they will think like you are submitting a paper, manuscript for publication, and then they will see these ideas, they will think that this is a new idea. Well, this is not a new idea. This was some idea that you introduce elsewhere, and then you want to publish it again and get credit for it again. Yeah, so that could be also falsification. That is like altering the data or result dishonestly. Like just as I told you, like you have some outlier, you remove this outlier. You are interviewing a certain group and you get like different opinions, and you eliminate some of these opinions that you don't like or that does not agree with your hypothesis. Yeah, that's falsification. Or yeah. Fabrication is that you just make up the data or the results. So you don't interview anyone, and you just said, "Oh, I interviewed this. They said that. They said this. They said this," or you just didn't develop any model, and you said, "Oh, this is the model results," and you just provide some colorful figures that you just made up. There was no model. There was nothing, and you just made it up. Yeah. And this like all these three could be very dangerous, but fabrication and falsification could be I mean, they are all dangerous and they are all bad practice, but this one could lead to a lot, like for example, like I'm showing certain results, then other researcher will look at this result and say, wow, this is very good results, this is very good research direction. I will just follow and pursue this direction, and I will continue this type of research to get more results. And then they put their time, they put their efforts, they put their resources, they put their career, like trying to pursue what you are proposing. And then they reach a dead end because it was fabricated, it was wrong from the first place. Yeah, so that could lead to a lot of wasting other people's time, resources, and effort. So that could be very dangerous. Yeah, the falsification and fabrication. So here, I want you to, this is like your third participation activity. I want you to either read this data, this is about plagiarism and hydrology, or watch this video. It's a very interesting video. It's about fabrication and falsification, and it shows you just exactly what I mentioned, like how fabrication and falsification could lead to wasting of resources and effort and time of other people. Yeah, so watch this video or read, like either or, like you either read this article or you watch this video, whatever. Like if you like to read, read. If you like to watch, watch. Yeah, and then say your thought on what stood out to you and what takeaway did you gain from either this guy or this guy. Very interesting video. I like highly recommend you to watch. If you are into hydrogeology, groundwater hydrology, that would be also an interesting article to read. Okay. So this is a class exercise, like just to wrap up and to see how much we understood from this lesson. So in this class exercise, let's just read it, yeah, and then let's see like how to deal with a situation. How would you deal like with a situation like this? So Dr. Wixford is the principal investigator of a large epidemiological study on the health of 10,000 agricultural workers. She has an impressive data set that include information on demographics, environmental exposures, diet, genetics, and various disease outcomes such as cancer, Parkinson's disease, and ALS. She has just published a paper on the relationship between pesticide exposure and Parkinson's disease in a prestigious journal. She is planning to publish many other papers from her dataset. So from this dataset, she is planning to publish many other papers. She received a request from another research team that wants access to her complete dataset, which she still didn't publish. They are interested in examining relationship between pesticide exposure and skin cancer, which was originally part of her original intention, or like disease outcomes such as cancer, yeah, and Parkinson disease. So that was part of her original plan, and then they want to use this data for the same purpose. Yeah, Dr. Wexford was planning to conduct a study on this topic. So if you are Dr. Wexford and you receive this email, how are you gonna respond? So you are here in a dilemma because you have the ethical responsibility of sharing the like the outputs of your work. You should share it with like participant and the general like scientific community, but you still didn't publish it, you still didn't get credit for it. So how are you gonna deal with this ethical dilemma, or how are you gonna deal with this, like should you give it to them, or you should tell them no, like wait until I publish it or until I do this work, which you might do or you might not do, yeah, or which could also take like years to do it, yeah. So yeah, so you have like the ethical norm of openness oblige her to share the data, and also her funding agency rule which oblige her also to share the data. So it has like two things, like her funding agency is also obliging her. So like if you get from federal funding, one of the obligation, as you will learn from the lesson fair data principles, that you should share your data, yeah, not just keep it. On the other hand, like if you share this data, you are already planning to publish this, and then this will deprive her, and not only her but also her team, of recognition and priority to get these published. So like because the team also put an effort in this. So you see the dilemma here. Should I just fulfill my responsibility as a researcher and my obligation from funding agency to share the data, or should I, this is on one hand, but on the but if I share the data, I will deprive my team from this recognition and from this priority. So how can you do this? So there is no right answer for this. You can do this in many ways. So one way, for example, is that she can explain this to the other researchers, share the data with them, and ask them to sign like a data uses agreement, like that she has the right for this data and she has the right to publish this data first and to present this, make this publication first, and this is and she does not want to deprive her team from this recognition, because they would need, they need this, for example, yeah, for because you need this publication. Like if you are a PhD student, you need this publication for your thesis. If you are a researcher, you need to have publication to get promoted, and so on and so forth, yeah. So basically in this data users agreement, you can define publication plan and authorship and so on and so forth. Another response would be like, why don't we collaborate on this? So I can share the data and maybe we can find like some form of collaboration, yeah. So that could be like another response. Okay, so you can read this here. And one last thing, I'm not gonna read all like everything written on this slide, but these are other deviation from acceptable research practice. For example, like let me just read a few of them. Publishing the same paper in two different journals without telling like the editors. Yeah, you submit the paper for two different journals and you say, okay, if it got published there first, then it's okay, and then I will withdraw it from the other journal. That's unethical, yeah, because you are wasting reviewers' time and you're wasting editors' time and you're wasting resources. Yeah? And so, your forced participation activity, which deviation attract your attention most? Like, I'll give you my answer. So this including a colleague as an author on a paper in return of favor, even though the colleague didn't make serious contribution to this paper. Some people do this, yeah. Like some people, to increase their publications, they will do certain things like that. So that one thing that attract my attention. Another thing that attracted my attention: stretching the truth on a job application or curriculum vitae. So sometimes, I mean, I find myself, I didn't do this like before. I was very modest when I write this cover letter. They were almost like, I don't know, 1 or 2 lines. But then I learned is that you should I mean, this is not a good practice, and you should be not to be shy about like talking about your research and its significance and its impact. So sometimes I find myself like might be doing this. So, but that's it. Like, I mean, if you found yourself doing this, you can correct it. Yeah. Failing to keep a good research record, so that's very important. And watch the fair data principle to learn about like why it's important to keep a good like research record. So read these list, and just whichever one that attract your attention more, 1 or 2 or 3, just discuss them or mention them. Okay, that's all for this lesson, and see you in the next lesson.